hello everyone. How are you doing? Let me turn off this heater. It's cold in the basement. Oh, let me put up the chat screen. Let's see where that's at. Here we go. And right over here, have to have my Sunday rum. Not doing cultivar ONR today, but still need to notice it's only a tiny bit because I'm not going to go crazy. Hello, Stephen Ecker. It's freezing down here. Sorry if you can hear this heater, but I'm dying. I'm still a Florida girl at heart, and it is cold in the basement. Okay, this is not going to be a particularly long show, but when I change my mind on things, I like to give an explanation. And I'm sure this one might raise a little bit of controversy. But before we get started, and me, controversial never. And before we get started, along the bottom is my support links. I did have someone up their Patreon amount this morning, and I was like, yay! So thank you. I will be updating the thank you screen at the end, but I super appreciate it. So if you can support this show, patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. And just one more promo before we go. Oh, I need to be the good YouTuber. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. I really stay stagnant on the number of subscribers, and that's okay. It's very much, as I said, a niche channel, but I never asked to subscribe either. So please subscribe and, like the video or dislike the video. Either way, it's feedback that YouTube rewards. And my last promo is Sean Dempsey's book, Tale of Two Brothers. Sean's been one of my sponsors since Porkfest last year. Oh my goodness, that's well over a year. Thank you, Sean. And again, if you have a young person in your life that you want to give them good freedom life lessons, it's a great book, tale2brothers.com or Amazon. And Daniel says it's in the 50s. He's up in the mountains. I'm really jealous. I love the mountains, but I get cold. It's not cold upstairs or even outside. It's hot here. But this is the basement. I'm like in the root cellar, okay? And I'm not a root. Okay, so let's get right to the topic. Obviously, let me get this right off the bat. We are not talking about public office. I am a hardcore term limits person when it comes to public office. And I'll explain, or if there are questions, the difference. I always had different reasons for believing in term limits for internal party office than I did for... Oh, why isn't... Because Doc Sexy's in the house. Than I did for public office. Let's just get right off the bat why I believe in term limits for public office. Because I don't believe in public office to begin with. I don't believe in rulers, but it's the system that we have. And because it's the system that we have and nobody has any kind of right to that position, and no, you don't have a right to vote for somebody to be rulers over somebody else, though if that's the system we have in place, everyone needs to be treated equally. So I wanted to be careful in what I said that, because I'm not denying like equal voting rights. I don't believe in any voting rights, but if you're going to have elections, then everybody has to be treated equally. But because it is a rulership situation where the incentive is to become corrupt. It's actual power that can actually corrupt people in ways in which there is the justified use of force behind it. Because of that, I think you need to shake things up and get different views in there so you don't have entrenched power interests that have real power behind them. When I mean real power, I mean to hurt people. Power to throw people, to use the force of the state. So that's my reason why. But I understand the arguments against it. Most libertarians do not agree with me. Most libertarians do not believe in term limits for public office because they are like, that limits choice. There already is a way to limit somebody's term. Just don't vote for them. And that's true. But when you're dealing with public office, in which if you think all elections aren't done without cheating, and I'm not even talking about last election, I don't care. like about last election. I've seen, and I know I'm going to trigger some people, I've seen no widespread evidence of some kind of huge voter fraud that swung the election. I do think Biden won the election. I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but that's my opinion. But particularly, there's been elections, come on, that can be rigged. And that's another reason. Okay, and then when you got things like that douche in Texas who tweeted that it was a dereliction of duty, and I'm going to do a whole show on this guy, that douche in Texas who said it was a dereliction of duty for the Republicans not to throw libertarians off the ballot. It's that kind of just widespread corruption. So my position on that has remained the same. But now I want to get to internal offices. Private groups are different. And my reasons for previously supporting it before had nothing to do with corruption or not having a right to the position. In other words, it had nothing to do with the reasons I believe in it for public office. I believed in it for different reasons. And I've come to the realization or the opinion, and I kind of came about this in a circuitous way, that it is nannying party members to impose or want to impose term limits on internal party offices. There's no justified use of force. People can abuse any position, whether they're in the position for 1 term or 3 or 10. But my reasons for supporting it before is that A, everyone I've seen who's gone beyond 3 terms has gone crazy. But I just found out, and I don't know if he went crazy because I didn't know him, there actually was a 4-term secretary, Bob Solenthrop. And as far as I know, he didn't go crazy. But nearly everyone, once they get past their 3rd term, I've seen them go a little batty. Or towards the end of their 3rd term, and I'm talking consecutive terms. Alicia Matson didn't go nutty, but she didn't serve 3 consecutive terms either. There was a break where she didn't win an election, and then she ran again. Sarwark went woo-woo. So, but I have a very limited data set. Should I really be making policy based upon how bad Nick Sarwark was, basically, towards the end of his 3rd term? My other reason was I think people get stagnant. For instance, Alicia Matson again. Alicia is one of the best secretaries in any field that I've ever seen. Never mind party secretary. Like if she was a corporate secretary out in the workforce, Alicia Matson is fantastic. But yet in my 1st term, when I beat Alicia, I implemented things that to me were no-brainers. And it astounded me, like, how come Alicia didn't do this? And the reason is, and this is a fact, and this isn't, I'd never take shots against Alicia. I have the utmost respect for Alicia. We're not always BFF. I don't always agree with her. She voted to remove me on the Judicial Committee, so obviously I think she get things wrong. And actually on that one, I think she let her emotions get away with her. But in general, everyone knows I have massive respect for Alicia. So when I use her as an example, it's because I'm using as an example somebody who is at the top of their game. And there were things that I did that I reformed that I don't know why she didn't. And the only reason I could come up with, it's not lack of skill, and it's certainly not lack of intelligence. It had to be that you either get tired or you're so used to being in a position that you don't see the opportunities for change. You become blind to it. And sometimes you get a new person in there and they can see things. I think there's other ways around that though, but I still do think that's a very valid reason. That's still a very valid reason, but you can build in things against that. But that was my main reason. Also, it was to build the bench. But I think we can build the bench in other ways. But I still think that's a really important consideration. I want to interact with comments. Daniel Lutz said, my biggest reason is practicing what we preach and showing the way we want things to can work, not just saying it. It's not apples to apples, though. So that never has been one of my reasons, because my reasons for supporting it in public office are completely different than my reasons for previously supporting it in internal party offices. Totally different reasons. It was pragmatic reasons for supporting it in internal party office. So we just disagree, and that's okay. Because I do believe practicing what we preach is a big deal when you're talking about equivalent things. But for instance, I think D.L. Cummings made a really good point where, even though at convention I voted to hear from Tony D'Orazio during the chair elections, D.L. Cummings made the perfect argument for saying that libertarians saying not allowing Tony was hypocritical because we don't like debate censorship outside in the world. It's not the same thing at all. As DL said, out in the world, the people who are limiting somebody from being heard in debate are not the exact same people as the voting body. At a Libertarian Party convention, it's the exact same group of people. It's not the same thing at all. It's just not. I voted to hear from him because I wanted to hear from him. And he worked hard and I wanted to reward him. But it had nothing to do with, oh, this is showing that we don't do internally what we want externally. It's totally different situation. And I think when you try to force something that's superficially similar into being the same thing, that is not good logic, and it puts the sheep at the mercy of the wolves. Like, we don't need to twist ourselves in a pretzel and harm ourselves to prove a point to wolves. This analogy, please understand this is an analogy. I'm not at all making an equivalency. I'm not calling anyone names. It's just an analogy I try to use, and we're going to be using it multiple times because I'm going to say something else I changed my mind on. For instance, in general, I used to have these debates with Christians. Christians are supposed to tell the truth. But what does truth mean? And I don't mean that in... Actually, let me word it a different way, because I don't mean it in the postmodern way that I have my truth and you have your truth. Let's word it in the negative way. Christians aren't supposed to lie. That's not exactly the same thing, by the way. What is a lie? A lie is the withholding of accurate information from somebody who is entitled to hear it. So, for instance, is a Christian lying when they were on the football field and they pretend like they're going to be moving one way to fake out the guy on the opposite team, but instead move the other way? Did they lie through their body? Well, technically, yes. They deceived somebody. But lying isn't simply deceiving. It's deceiving somebody who has a right to not be deceived, that's in a position to expect truthfulness from you. So, the classic example is if you lived in Nazi Germany and Nazis came to your door and asked if you had Jews hiding in your basement, and you did in fact have Jews hiding in your basement, and you were a Christian. If you said, "No, I don't," would you have been sinning? No, because people who are going house to house looking to murder somebody do not have the right to the truth. Because they are evil actors, they have forfeited that. That's a big theological debate, but it's throughout the Bible. Rahab was praised for her great faith when she lied to the government officials who were looking for the Israeli spies, and she sent them in another direction, and she's praised in the book of Hebrews for her act of faith. The Hebrew midwives are praised for their lie to Pharaoh because he ordered them to kill the male Hebrew babies the minute they were born. And when he asked them why they didn't kill them, they were midwives, so they were women. They said, the Hebrew women are lively and give birth before we get there. And they were praised for their lie, because a pharaoh who wants to murder babies has no right to the truth. Okay, that is a completely biblical principle. Sorry that I'm going all Christian here, but that's how I base my morality, on certain precepts like that. Where was I even going with this? So, yeah. So if we're going to tie ourselves in knots and limit our own rights in order to show we're not hypocrites in a situation which is entirely different, that is similar in principle, analogy people, to thinking that you always have to tell the truth, even to somebody who's trying to extract the truth from you in order to murder somebody. Entirely different situation. So that's one reason, I don't think it's a hypocrisy situation. However, Michael Stengel says, to clarify, he's talking about complacency at the organizational level, not just the office holder. My concern was primarily the office holder, but I think you're correct. Complacency at the organizational level too. But don't the delegates have the right to vote for complacency? See, I'm starting to go into whose rights are we impacting here? And that's what eventually changed my mind. And I'm going to give you the fact pattern that led me to even reconsider this. And Tyler said for party elections, maybe there should be consecutive term restrictions. That is what I used to hold to. I used to hold to no more than 3 consecutive terms in one position, unbroken. Take a break for a term and run again. I don't care if you have the position 50 times in your lifetime. 3 times in a row, take a break. 3 times in a row, take a break. So I had a very, very modest, and also, and I notice I said the same position. Say somebody was chair for 3 terms and then ran for at-large. I didn't care. But something in examining party history, and I think this convention proved it to me. No, Tyler, they don't have a right to vote at all. See, I don't think having rulers is anything anyone has a right to, and we could limit it any way that we want that isn't treating different classes of people differently. There's no right to rulers. So I don't see, if I believed in democracy, if I believed in a right to rulers, I would agree with you, Tyler. But then again, maybe I would agree with you, all things being equal, but we know all things aren't being equal. That the longer you're in office, the more dark money and things that you get. It's not the same in internal party politics whatsoever. There's no money. The way our delegates are chosen, it's just not possible to influence them in corrupt ways like that. At least as far as I can see, and I've never seen it. So, on the complacency thing, or the maybe you're not going to do as well if you've been in the position for too long. One of my big arguments for that, and I'm going to name names here, unfortunately, and it's not that I think this person did a bad job, but I was starting to get alarmed, like somebody was in a position. No, I don't think any LNC members have been influenced by dark money. All of the money's been out in the open. No, that wasn't a whole thing leading into convention, Daniel. No, everything was pretty out in the open. And the amounts of money you're talking about in the party, to me, there has to be a certain amount when you talk about things being an actual influence. No, that wasn't anything to do with election. When you're on the LNC, you can get influence with your friends and things like that, yes. But I'm talking about literally paying people off. Of course, it's all relative. And I don't find it persuasive enough to limit terms. But you're talking about that, the $85,000 to that corporation. That's not the type of thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about basically having the power to buy an election. That's never happened in the party. And if it did, I don't think term limits would help it. The reason why money flows into politics is because there's real power there. That, I mean, talking about politics and public office, that there isn't, at least right now in the party, in internal office. I don't know about the dynamics of the RNC or the DNC, and I'm dealing with the LNC, so I forgot where I was going. Oh, so what was starting to alarm me, and it's not that this person did a bad job, but I think they were in 8 terms. But again, I realized my alarm was paternalistic. That I didn't like the way that I thought maybe the delegates would just be like, well, we're used to him, so we're just going to keep voting him in. And I'm speaking of Tim Hagen. I think he was in for 8 terms. Maybe 7 terms. Somebody tell me. We could look it up on LPD, but it was a long time. But you want to know what? Why did I think I knew better than the delegates? And I think last convention showed everyone gets voted off eventually. They either stop running or they get voted off eventually. I do think there was some complacency there in that role. I think Todd Hagopian brought in fresh ideas, but he ran on those fresh ideas and he won. So rather than me thinking I need to micromanage the delegates, maybe step back and trust the delegates. Now, or trust isn't even the right word, because I could think the delegates make a really terrible choice. So obviously, trust implies making the right choice. That's not the right word. Maybe accept the fact that the delegates get to choose and not try to manage it from afar. That's better. Trust isn't the right word, because I know the delegates can make crappy decisions, but accept that this is our organization. But let me tell you a situation that I had already changed my mind on that started me down this road. I used to very firmly believe, yeah, that's true, JJ, as well. I used to very firmly believe that LNC members should not be members of caucuses. I quit the Radical Caucus when I became an officer for multiple reasons. A, thinking about the situation, and because of a very bad experience I had with the Radical Caucus when I was Region 1 representative, where the interests of the caucus conflicted with the interests of my region, and I felt as if the caucus was placing pressure on me to act against the interests of my region. And it wasn't just pressure. I felt like I was going to get punished. I felt like I was getting very close to getting censured by the caucus. And that was just my feeling. They never overtly threatened me with that. But this was back when the Radical Caucus used to actually hold its members to account. And if you did anti-radical things, they threw your ass out. Now they don't give a shit. You know, because voting an LNC member out is one of the most unradical things you could do. They've opposed that every single time it ever happened. And in fact, the situation they almost censured me for was the Arvin Bohra situation. Yet with me, they shut their mouth and they let Susan Hogarth and Richard Longstreth get away with it. So they don't have a soul anymore. They used to hold people to account. And I thought, you know, because my region had wanted me to vote to remove Arvin. Now, I do regret that vote now. I've said that multiple times, and I wish I had abstained, and my region wouldn't have punished me. They would have accepted that. And also, I'm not going to shy away from responsibility that my voice was very influential in forming my region's opinion. Would they have come to the opinion that I should vote to remove Arvin if I already didn't have that opinion? I've got to own up to my own things, and I've become convinced I was wrong. I was wrong then. My opinion was wrong. I'm not going to say my vote was wrong because I don't have a crystal ball to say whether I influenced my region or whether my region would have had that opinion anyway. But I certainly don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. But I can say for my personal opinion, I was wrong. I've been wrong on things before. But that's a different story. I've done a whole shows on that. So I came to a pretty firm opinion that LNC members shouldn't be members of caucuses, and I resigned my radical caucus position. Yet I'm now an officer again, and I am a member of the Mises Caucus, at least the National Mises Caucus. What changed? Well, what changed is my position, I still have it in an ideal world. And here's the thing. We don't live in an ideal world right now. I was removed from the LNC partially, go look at the evidence, for being friendly to the Mises Caucus. I might as well have been a member. There was no kind of impartiality that protected me at all. I was punished for simply being nice to a caucus. And when push came to shove, who had my back? Who were the party members that had principle, that stood by me? It was the Mises Caucus. I want to be on that train. I want to be on the train of right. So in an ideal world where party members would uniformly stand up for things like due process and not removing political opponents, yeah, don't be a member of a caucus. And I hope we get to a point in our party that is close to this ideal world I hold in my dreams. And if the party was like that right now, I would not be a member of any caucus. But the fact is, it's not. And just like the really rigid view that Christians should never lie, and if a Nazi comes to your door and asks if you're hiding Jews in the basement, you say yes, where you punish the good, Daniel, I'm not saying nobody outside the Mises Caucus, but 90% of my support was the Mises Caucus. It's just a fact. I have the list of names of people who wrote. So just like in my analogy, in order to stand for what's right, you sacrifice other people for what you think is right. And the fact is, how did Greg Koukl, who's a really good Christian ethicist, I don't agree with him on everything, but where he talked about, he said, what is it? Moral relativism. He goes, there is, morality is in fact relative, he said, but it's not relative in the way that relativists, what's commonly called in philosophy moral relativism, says. In that philosophy, they say morality is relative depending upon the person. But in fact, morality is relative depending upon the circumstance. Each circumstance has to be taken on its own fact pattern. But similarly situated people should act the same way. That is how morality is rigid when it comes to persons. But it's not rigid when it comes to circumstances. That's just the fact. You got to take the fact patterns. So the truism, Christians shouldn't lie, is generally true. It's not true if it's a Nazi at your door asking if you're hiding Jews in your basement. It's not true if you saw a lady screaming down the alley and a would-be rapist comes up to you and says, which way did she go? You tell them that way, when she went that way. And there's nothing immoral about that. In fact, in that circumstance, I think it would be immoral to tell them the truth. So anyway, I changed my position on the Mises Caucus, and I've been a member of the Mises Caucus. And I realized for the same reasons, we're in a fractured party right now, and the lone wolves get picked off. Unfortunately, when you're outspoken like I am, and often make yourself a target, you gotta have a pack. And also, some members, and I'll get to your question, Adam, I see it. Some Mises members asked me, because remember, when I joined Mises, I was not an LNC member. I joined them after I was, well, it's been voided, so I guess I was an LNC member, but it was in that weird situation of my removal, which has now been voided. But that's when I joined. And I was asked in my campaign, if you were elected, are you going to resign the caucus again because of your prior position that LNC members should not be members of the caucus? And I'll tell you what I said. I said, nope. I view the state of the party right now as we're in a rescue mission. The party was dying and we're in a rescue mission. And I want to be part of the rescue team. And I'm realizing that that analogy holds somewhat true when it comes to any other artificial limitations on LNC members. And when I say artificial, I mean ones that aren't in the bylaws. If the delegates vote to put something in the bylaws, then that's what the delegates said, and then it's not artificial. But things that individual LNC members may impose or think that should hold to everybody, those are artificial. But let me tell you the thing that, which was the straw that broke the camel's back, that made me realize I can't consistently hold this position. And I was being paternalistic. There was a bylaws amendment that we never got to hear bylaws, but I didn't know that when I was considering my opinions on bylaws amendments that were going to come up to be heard in 2022. Because let me tell you another position that I used to hold that I no longer hold. I used to be opposed to waterfall elections. If you don't know what a waterfall election is, it's when somebody runs for a higher office, such as officer, they lose, and then they turn around and run for at-large. And I used to think that was fundamentally unfair to the people who didn't try to run for a higher office and was just campaigning for at-large the whole time. But is it really? You know that anyone can put their name in at convention. Is it then unfair? So I realized that this was me just, again, nannying the delegates. If they felt that someone worked their ass off to run for at-large, and then here comes X person who ran for chair, whatever it might be, that then turns around and runs for at-large, they could just not vote for the person. Why do I want to take away that? That's just, I realized when push came to shove, I couldn't vote for that bylaw amendment. And if I couldn't vote in good conscience to make it a rule, then why did I believe it? And then that made me turn around and say, well, isn't this the same thing as artificial term limits for internal party office? And I felt it was. And actually, there was another thing that happened at the same time. Unbeknownst to the person that came and talked to me, they came and talked to me about my term limits position at convention, because they heard that that was my position, that I had said, well, let me preface this. And I see Tyler's question too. Let me preface this by saying, please do not consider this video or my change in position any kind of declaration of intention that I'm going to run for a 4th term. That is not what this is about. It is not what it's about. Perhaps I will. Perhaps I won't. I think thinking about next terms when you're just elected is pretty frickin' twisted. And do your job. Simple as that. Do your job. I can tell you right now, I'm not planning on it. But I never plan on things like that. But I'm not planning on it. And I suspect Wayne wouldn't favor that. This has been... I've been on the LNC now 8 years when this term ends. At very high workload positions. Region 1 was hard. Secretary is hard. I'm not saying I'm not, but I'm also telling you that's not what's in my head, and that's not what this is about. And I'm trying to think, is anyone else on the LNC? Multiple. Steve Nikala is not in the same position. He's on his 4th term, I think, but not in the same position. I think he's the only one. Maybe. I don't know, but that's not what this is about. I'm sure that's what this will be spun to be. The people who are going to spin it that way don't like me anyway, so I don't care. All right, so somebody came up to me at convention, though, to talk about a potential 4th term, and I said the same thing then. I go, I think it's rather obscene to be thinking about a 4th term when you just won your 3rd one. Like, people in public office do that. All they do when they're in office is plan for their next run. No, do your damn job. But I had also said to that person, plus, I believe in term limits, 3 consecutive terms. This will be my 3rd term. I'm not going to be running again. But this person looked at me and said, why would you take away my choice to vote for you? And that got me. That got me here. I was like, okay. I mean, I could it'd be one thing if I said, no, I'm done. I just don't want to do this anymore. Then if I don't want to do it, consent is part of this arrangement. But if I'd be willing to do it, why would that got me. So all of these factors, that's why I changed my mind. And I've become convinced by studying party history that there's a natural term limit in the habits of the delegates already. There's outliers like Tim Hagen. But the fact in 50 years, besides Tim, there's only been one other person that has served more than 3 terms. I'm pretty sure, maybe 2, but I think it's just Bob Sullenthrop. Means the delegates kind of get tired of somebody after 3, or they decide not to run. So there is a natural term limit. The human being can only take so much, and most people probably decide not to run after 3. But if not, it just seems to me there's a natural limiting already. I don't hold the artificial one. Now, I understand some people may say, well, but you said you wouldn't run for a 4th one, and if you do, I'm not going to vote for you because you said you wouldn't. That's perfectly understandable. And again, I'm not saying I am. That isn't what this is about. But I'm acknowledging that I changed my mind. But I'm not going to continue to hold a position and defend a position and limit myself ethically to something that I don't believe is necessarily the ethical. I'm not saying it's unethical, but I'm not going to artificially limit. I don't think it's the right thing. David Nolan, I don't think reran. Some people just don't want to do it again. It's a lot of work. I don't think people realize your life is the LNC. And if you're on the LNC and your life isn't the LNC, you're not the right person for the LNC, because that's what it takes. But again, that's up to the delegates. If they want to elect somebody who doesn't put in that much, that needs to be part of your campaigning. But anyway, so now let me go to the questions. I've explained myself. People can agree or not agree, but I felt I owed you an explanation, because this is kind of something I've believed for a while. And yeah, Kathy, it's expensive. Now, you got a much smaller region now, Kathy. When I was Region 1, it was 9 states. Do you want to know how much it cost me per year, out of my own pocket, to be Region 1 representative? $10,000. And I didn't fundraise for that at that time, except for, I think I raised like $300. Because I had a really good job, and I could afford it. My first secretary race, I raised about half the money to run, because I had a really good job, and I can afford it. This secretary race, I was unemployed. Guess how much it cost to run for secretary? And all of my to any donor, how I spent the money is public. Have receipts. I have a spreadsheet. But guess how much it costs to run for secretary? I'd love for someone just to guess. My donors probably know, but I'll give a few minutes for some guesses on how much a secretary run cost. And I don't even think it was absolutely an ideal secretary run. Like, if an ideal one would cost even more, but I ran a damn good one. But I'm just curious if anyone could guess how much it cost. Well, I'm waiting for guesses. I'm going to go and answer some of these questions. First one was from Adam. Let me put this up here. How do you join the Mises Caucus? I'm new to the party. It's easy to donate, but it's not easy to join. That is a really good question. In my experience, there's 2 levels of membership. Please understand, I'm not a leader in the Mises Caucus at all. I'm just a member, and I might say something wrong here. There's 2 types of memberships. One is national, and from my understanding, if you're a regular donor and they accept you as a member, and it's just like a passive thing, then you're a member of the National Mises Caucus. It's relatively easy. The state Mises membership is much more strenuous. I'm not a member of the Colorado Mises Caucus. There's a whole lot of reasons for that I'm not going to get into. It's internal stuff, and I don't have the time to put in at the state level anyway, so it's not something I really pursued. But at your state level, it's different for each state. You would have to talk with your state coordinator, and they would need to personally vet you. It's an interview. So at least that's how it is in most states. So nationally, if you're a donor and you're kind of just generally accepted as one of them, then you're a national member. That's my understanding. You might want to clarify that with Michael Heiss. That's kind of how I am. But for state membership, there's a entry process. Okay. And it's different for each state. The states are somewhat autonomous. Oh, I have a button to hide comments. Let's see if that works. Let me see if I can use this button to get your comment off the screen. Yay, it worked. Okay, next question. Tyler wants to know if I'm going to change my opinion on abortion. I don't even think you know my opinion on abortion, to be honest with you. I don't. Like, you're so hot on evictionism, I don't think you've ever really listened to me, because my position's perfectly consistent with that up to a point. And I'm always amenable to changing my position on anything. I'm amenable to changing my position on libertarianism. I'm a seeker of truth and ethics, and I will follow truth and ethics wherever they go. Tyler says, I think you should focus on Congress. You can win, especially in Colorado. Nah. I'll run for public office, but I think you fundamentally don't understand Colorado if you think that. We are a blue state now. A taxationist theft anarchist, I could win, but to think that this is something on the high scale of probability, you don't understand Colorado. I am running for town council. I've got a 5% chance of winning. It's worth it. I'll spread libertarian ideas, but I've never been an external facing person primarily in any organization that I've been a member of. When I was really, really involved in my church, I wasn't into external apologetics, meaning, you know, I did the evangelism explosion thing, but that wasn't my primary thing. My primary thing was internal education and internal administration. It was ministering to other Christians, not converting other people to Christianity. I'm that way in every organization that I'm in. So my role, my talents, and my passion will always be internal party things. That's just my nature. Edifying other libertarians. Serving other libertarians. So wishing public office on me, you're not wishing what's best for me and what's best for my talents. Just letting you know. That's not what's best for me. So I ask you as a friend to want what's best for me. Public office might be something I do, but that's not my primary talents or passion. Internal always will be. It always is. And every group I'm a part of. My goals in running for public office is to get more people in the Libertarian Party and then train them internally. That's my thing. I'm a trainer. All right. And I'm a drinker. I drink and I know things. I'm going to pick on Tyler because he's a friend. One thing we tend to do in this party, I know you can take it, Tyler. And again, you're a friend and I love you. We tend to want other people to be what we want them to be rather than what they are. And I do it too. We all do it. I'm just asking my friends to understand that it's as Arya Stark said. Okay, any Game of Thrones fans, she's sitting with her father and says, one day you'll be the lady of a holdfast and raise up many princes. And she just looked at him and is like, that's not me. But that's what he wanted for her. Are you seeing my camera jump? Wayne is like moving furniture or something upstairs. What is it about me being live that makes him all of a sudden go, what's the noisiest thing I could do right above her studio? You don't hear that? What is he doing? Is he moving the couch? Okay, anything else, anyone? I would love to answer any other questions, and I hope you forgive me, Tyler. Tonight, The Anarchist is on tonight on HBO. Even though the preview made it look like the effing Purge, I'm gonna watch it. I'm sure I'm gonna get highly irritated. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. I'm excited for it though, because even if they spin it badly, it's already, the spin will be better than people thinking, you know, anarchy is just people running around throwing bombs. That's a plus. And perhaps enough people will be intrigued that they'll actually look it up and talk to some actual anarchists. That would be nice. But what I might do is take notes during the episode and do a stream later tonight. Stephen, that's about how much it would take to run a top-rate officer campaign. You're correct. I didn't spend that much, but it would take about that much, and I'll explain why. I spent close to $20,000 on my race. I did everything I personally could, but a top-rate LNC officer race would be sending proxies or their campaign manager to conventions the candidate couldn't make. So every single convention would be attended. I went to every one I could. Like every weekend there was a convention, I was at one. And I was able to afford to send DL Cummings, was it 2 or 3 conventions? But ideally, every weekend I was gone, 1 or 2 people on my behalf should have been gone too, because there were multiple conventions every weekend. So yeah, 35 to 40,000 is what it would take to run a top rate internal office race. Minimum though to run one that's a respectable race is about 20,000. That's probably what Steve Dasbach spent as well on his chair race. And God, Angela probably spent a lot more. I don't know, but I would say each of us probably in the realm of 20,000. I don't know what either of them spent. My information's public. My spreadsheet is public on how much I spent. So, yeah. So when the LNC goes and thinks they can remove somebody and go, you don't have a right to that position. Yeah, the people who spent up to $20,000 to get me in that position have that right, though. Whew. Anyway, I'm tired. All right, I've got actually a meeting with Angela in a half an hour, so I'm going to get going. I might stream tonight, though, after the anarchists. We shall see. I also want to do an LNC update, so I might do that this afternoon, but Wayne and I are going to go out for a while. There is an executive committee meeting on Tuesday. The information is on lp.org. It's also on the LNC list, but it's probably going to be a 10-minute meeting. It's just to authorize potentially authorize some ballot access litigation in Georgia. I don't know, maybe it'll be up to a half an hour, but it's still come. Well, maybe it being short will inspire you to come because, you know, hours of meetings aren't your jam, you sick person. How could you not love hours of meetings? But, you know, otherwise there will be an XCOM on Tuesday. So maybe I'll see you later. Thank you very much. And I hope you have an awesome day. Either way. Bye-bye.
Given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business.